So good afternoon, everybody, and I'll add to Lexi's welcome to the office here in the Walbrook. It's very good to see you all here today. So I want to really just spend around about 20-25 minutes to give a little bit of a strategic context to the two presentations that you will see on procurement and our application services business. And then at the very end of my session, I will sort of introduce the two speakers. So let's just give a little bit of background, a bit of context to what we want to talk about today. A number of you will be familiar with this slide. It's one that we use quite frequently, and it depicts what I call the three building blocks of our business. So business processing services, very much the annuity business, predictable business, strong margins, accounts a substantial part of the revenue, profitability, cash flow of our business. And certainly over the last 2 years or so, what we've been trying to do there is to really reduce the customer and contract concentration risk of that business and really focus it into some particular offerings. Now, I won't spend more time talking about that today because that's not really the focus of today's event. And then, of course, we've got the two other building blocks, technology and procurement. So procurement is a business which currently the financial performance belies the market position, which we'll hear about. And that's because the business is very much transitioning from where it was to where we need it to be, which is built around technology. And then, of course, the technology part of our business really has two component elements. There's a software component, so Zuba, and then, of course, the application services business, which Alok will talk to us about. And in some respects, the application services part of the business is that annuity component of technology because it's a more predictable part of our business. We do have some annuity revenue, profit and cash flow streams. And the software component of the business is probably the more unpredictable one because it is built around achieving deals in that business. So I thought I'd just talk a little bit about the sort of what, how and why of the strategy. So the what is very much built around in business processing services to protect what we have there because it is a strong cash flow stream, strong profit stream, and also to grow that part of the business in selected areas. So really focused on particular offerings. And, you know, a significant part of that business is built around insurance and the financial services part of the business. The technology and procurement areas of the business are those areas of business where we see growth and margin expansion. And one of the reasons why the margin expansion opportunity is there is because historically we've not achieved the level of financial performance we should in that business as it started to sort of transition into what we want it to be. So very much looking forward, we see that really is the area where we'll see the greatest margin expansion. Unlikely to see that in the BPS business because clearly the margin is actually at quite a healthy level anyway. So that's the sort of what. The how is very much built around these outer circles in a way, because what we're trying to do at the highest level is to use customer and market insight, to use innovation, technology to develop and deliver differentiated offerings that address the challenges that our customers have in their business, in business processing, in their operations, and add value to their businesses. So that's really how we want to go about doing this. And then why are we focusing in the way that we are on technology, innovation, insight and differentiation? I think it's really down to two areas. The first one is the trends within business processing services with a greater focus increasingly on value. And then the second is the growing impact that technology has on our industry, on our customers and on our own business. So turning for a moment to the trends within business processing services. Now, customers are increasingly buying differently in the sense that their focus is very much more on the value that they can get from the supply, the added value. They're very much more selective. And in fact, there are a number of examples where significant outsourcing contracts in some of the major companies actually are moving back in-house. So where you see contracts changing hands, it's not necessarily they've gone to a competitor. Sometimes they're going back in-house because a customer has decided that actually they don't see the value proposition. So it is very much about trying to find the value proposition. I think we're seeing what I would hesitate to call it the demise of offshoring because that would be a bit dramatic, but I think we are seeing companies increasingly looking at automation first. So whereas maybe 10 years ago, 5 years ago, offshoring was very high on the agenda in terms of low-cost arbitrage, increasingly what we're seeing is customers asking the question, well, actually, can we retain either the service in-house or can we use a supplier who can provide the service, but with automation around it? And so automation is really almost the first question to ask. We're moving away, I think, in business process services from what I call the FTE type pricing, so pricing built around the full-time equivalents, very much looking at pricing that's built around value creation, built around outcomes and outputs. So what is it we can create in terms of value for the business, and then you get rewarded accordingly. So I think what we're seeing increasingly is a trend towards what I call out-tasking rather than outsourcing, where sometimes there'll be componentization of the value chain and particular elements of it are actually capable of being outsourced or out-tasked, but other elements of that value chain being retained within the business. And I think it's suffice to say, actually, within that space, typically we don't see ourselves competing for end-to-end provision of outsourced services. We will compete in that market. It's something that we can do, but so can many of our competitors. And just as our competitors can do it, we can do it. But of course, it's very difficult to differentiate the offering other than through lower costs and through offshoring, unless you can bring some technology to that offering. So we will compete in the space. We'll do it selectively. We'll compete where we have relationships with prospective customers or indeed for existing customers. But much of what we do around this BPS area is going to be increasingly be built around the technology that we can add. So just maybe a word then about the trends in technology and the impact that's having on our business and customers and the market. I think a number of you may read the Harvard Business Review, but if you take a look at the Harvard Business Review, I think it was this month's, there's an article in there about the Internet of Things, and there's also an article which is called Digital Ubiquity. And in a way, those two articles effectively summarize what's happening with technology. Massive move towards digitization, where technology is starting to dictate the strategy. Whereas in the past, if you think of the phases we've gone through, technology originally used to support processes, then effectively the internet came along. What we're seeing increasingly with the so-called Internet of Things is technology driving a business strategy. And it's a good example, for instance, in the Digital Ubiquity article is looking at the GE business and how that's been transformed as it's moved away from the physical provision of products to the use of technology around those products and the sale of that technology. So technology also very much an enabler of automation. So if companies are going to look at automation, then technology clearly is going to drive that within the business. Interestingly, and I think we see this quite a lot, the progress of technology is actually so rapid, it's actually at a pace which is beyond what business can actually stand in terms of the rate of change. You only have to look back over the last 3 years to think that over that period of time, we've actually 25% roughly of the global population now have handheld devices, which is an incredible rate of change. And of course, what you've got in businesses is an inherent conservatism in terms of the changes they want to make within their technology. You've got the issues around data migration, clearly the importance of having reliability of processing, and very important of all and frequent topic is around data security. I think a very interesting example, for instance, with this recent trend with the banks sort of deconsolidating some of the businesses that were previously acquired. The Lloyds TSB business, for instance, TSB now coming out of Lloyds, there's a 10-year contract in place for new TSB to effectively continue to use the Lloyds backbone systems because of the difficulty of creating new systems for what will be effectively the new TSB bank. I think the other interesting thing about technology is that we have a generation of people who are growing up with technology, and that this generation actually tolerates the fact that technology doesn't work always. In fact, often it doesn't work. And I was only thinking back over the last 7 days myself. I can quote 3 examples where technology didn't work. One was when I tried to do some online shopping, and eventually I had to give up and make a phone call so I could actually get through and talk about it. The second one was I decided to join this sort of crowd of people who are increasingly using Uber for taxi services, and the first time I actually tried to do it, I got a message that said network error or server error, which meant I wasn't able to use it. And then the third example, which I mentioned recently, was actually on a cross-trainer machine, and it flashed up to say my heart rate was actually 185 and I should stop exercising immediately. And of course it wasn't 185 at all. I knew it wasn't 185. But imagine if you were flying an aeroplane with that sort of technology. I mean, we all know about this point about, turn it off and switch it on again, and hopefully it will actually work. I actually was on an aeroplane where the captain came across and he announced, this was a flight to go to Hong Kong, and he actually announced that that's exactly what he was going to do. He was going to turn off all the systems and turn them off again, turn them on again to get them to be functioning correctly. Fortunately, we were on the ground when he actually made that announcement. So reliability of technology is clearly very important. And if you think about some of the things that we do, so Gatwick, where we provide technology to Gatwick Airport, clearly the Lloyd's market here, the London insurance market, and we still do provide hosting, for instance, the London Metal Exchange. All of those installations clearly require very reliable technology. So the sort of rapid change of technology, digitization, is bringing lots of challenges for business. Very significant challenge is this linking then of legacy technology with a modern digital world. So we provide workers' compensation service, for instance, to Victoria in Australia. They run their system, a platform which they use for all of the agents in that system, across a legacy platform that was built in 1987. And when I've had conversations with them about, is there an opportunity to develop and update the technology, their response has been, well, it's working, and we would be concerned about the risk that it would give rise to if we were to transition onto new technology. So some of you will be familiar that we actually developed a handheld application called Zoom that would interact with the Victoria system. But of course, a lot of applications don't actually interface directly into the system because the challenges of achieving integration with those systems. So the second area really is where we can, or provides an opportunity essentially for us, is where technology is used as an enabler in processes, so we can contribute to that. The third area, of course, is using technology to personalize the offering. Many companies now increasingly using technology front end across the internet, and that is an opportunity for them to differentiate the offering, and that's again an area where we can help. That's particularly common, for instance, in banking. Responding to the demands of mobility. Now, increasingly people want to be transacting on the run, and so again in the London market here we developed the handheld offering for the market, Expresso, and that was essentially providing interaction with the underlying systems using mobile technology. So the other area then is about deriving value from the vast amounts of data that exists, so the so-called big data and use of analytics. And then finally, an area where we can provide help and support is in this whole area of the security and ensuring that systems are safe from things like cyber attacks and so on. So the challenges that technology gives to businesses as we go into this sort of massive digitization of the business world actually give rise very much to the opportunities that we see in our business. So strategy is very much then built around technology and the provision of technology and technology enablement. Again, some of you will have seen this before. This is the big T versus little t. So big T very much around selling technology products directly to a customer. So NetSet, Zuba, MM4 are some good examples. You'll see one or two others when Locke does his presentation. Little t is about providing technology-enabled services. So either using the technology that we have in our business to support a service offering to a customer, or in fact using third-party technology to do that, which could be licensed, or we could partner with somebody, or indeed we could acquire a business. So the focus there is about the intellectual property in that packaged offering around the services that we take to the customer. So it is all about trying to build repeatable, scalable offerings. It's about trying to retain intellectual property within our business, because that in itself gives us the opportunity to differentiate the offering and to bring value to the customer's business. And you'll see these themes in the two presentations today. So the procurement business very much built around technology. So selling big T, MM4, but also providing managed services with technology enablement. So we'll see an example of little t as well. And then the application services business very much driving the provision of technology services into little t, and importantly actually providing a pool of expertise to address technology challenges of our customers, to supplement the offerings and also to drive innovation. So within Locke's business we have a number of people who spend their time in the technology space trying to develop innovative offerings that we can take to the customer, and we'll see a number of examples of that later on. So without further ado, we'll move on to the presentations themselves. So don't know whether these photographs do justice to the presenters. You'll be able to form your own view of that in a moment. So Chirag Shah, he came into the Xchanging business with the acquisition of MM4, and the whole purpose of bringing MM4 into the business was to create this technology kernel for the procurement business. So his background is very much around technology and building technology-enabled business. So he will talk to us about the procurement business. And then Locke Sinha, who is the president of our application services business. Locke actually came into the Xchanging business through the acquisition of Cambridge back in 2008-09. He was actually one of the people who was in the original Cambridge business, then left and rejoined us. And one of the things he will mention to you, or I think it maybe is a bit too modest to mention it, but actually when I got involved with Xchanging, I really saw this business, the application services business, as being a sort of jewel in the crown, really, something that we could take to market, strong technology capability. But at the time, the business was actually loss-making, and in fact was experiencing declining revenues. So that's been turned around. We've got a good business that's starting to develop, and so Locke will talk to us about that. So Chirag, I'll hand over to you to talk about our procurement business.